Welcome to It Is Written Canada. Thank you for joining us. Imagine the dreams of a father being passed down to his son. The father's dreams of helping desperately sick people to find holistic healing, health, and wellness. That is the story of Phil Brewer, the co-founder and director of Silver Hills Guest House and Spa, a living lifestyle center in the beautiful Maple Lake Valley near Lambie, British Columbia.
Phil's father struggled to stop smoking, and when he finally kicked the habit and started to experience freedom from smoking, he continued to advance in his journey towards total health, improved nutrition, sleep, and inner peace, and a sense of self-control, relational wellness, and spiritual wholeness. Phil's father had a dream to get people out into nature because he believed that nature is God's physician. His belief was that if people could just escape the constant pathological busyness, the rat race, and stress that imprisons most men and women, they would then naturally find the fortitude to flourish.
Today on It Is Written Canada, Phil Brewer shares the story of his father's influence on his life, Phil's own personal journey to discover holistic health and wellness, as well as how he was able to get Silver Hills, this living lifestyle center, up and running, and was able to help countless souls experience holistic healing, health, and wellness for the last 40 years.
For me, Silver Hills started when I was 5 years old. My father was an advocate of health, and he started a vegetarian restaurant, so that's 1955. And you can imagine 1955, vegetarian, the word, nobody even knew what he was talking about. It lasted 2 years and then went out of business. But my dad was not out of the health business. He loved to teach health, and so he taught 5-day stop smoking plans. And so as I was growing up, it was 5-day stop smoking plans every month, and I used to help run the film and projector and work with the guests and visitors. He had a very hard time stopping smoking, very difficult time, and so he'd like to help them, but there were some people that were like him. They would struggle, like, how do you stop smoking? And he thought, if only we had a place in the country, how could we have a place in the country where we could take the ones that were really struggling, get them away from all cigarette smoking, out in the country in nature, and then they would have a chance of stopping. And so I was raised with this idea, you know what we should do? We should have a center in the country. I'm Phil Brewer, co-founder of Silver Hills Guest House, a live-in lifestyle center. Next year will be 40 years that we've been operating it. So my wife and I came to this valley in 1973, and it was a missionary training program. And so we were part of that until 1984. And in 1974, I went down to a place in Alabama where they had a lifestyle center to take some training so I could help in the missionary training program. And it was UG Pines Institute. And down there, two doctors were running it, Dr. Agatha and Calvin Thrash. To learn from them was fantastic, and they were also into natural health. They would give their patients medication. They'd say, here, take this medication for your heart disease, take this medication for your diabetes, but they would also give them a lifestyle prescription. And so do exercise, drink water, get to bed on time. They would do that thing. And so, they were doing that, and the patient would come back, after a month for a follow-up. How did you make out with the exercise? Well, we had visitors all month last month. I couldn't get out of the house. I was washing clothes, feeding visitors and things like that, so I just couldn't get out. So how did you make out with the medication? Well, my back is itchy, I'm having problems with my back, and they say, well, we'll change that medication for you. The next month they come back for another reevaluation. How did you make out with the exercise? Well, you wouldn't believe it, doctor, it rained every day. So what they were doing is they were taking the medication, but they weren't changing their lifestyle. it was kind of like my dad. He was into lifestyle education. They were into lifestyle education. I really wanted to have a place where we could do lifestyle education. So when I came back, and by 1984, the missionary training program, the missionaries had gone out and the property was still here, and the board said to me, what do you want to do with this place? And I said, I'd like to run a lifestyle center. And so they said, go ahead. Well, to run a lifestyle center, you have to have money. The neighbor invited me to build him a woodshed and garage combination. And so I built him that, and he really liked it. And so he said, well, will you build me a hobby barn? And so the hobby barn had a hip roof on it, and it was painted red and white trim, and a place for hay upstairs and 2 horses on the, he loved it. And his son came out, he saw what we had built, and he said, will you build me a house? And the property next door. And so he gave us the plans to look at, and we went over the plans, and we worked out all the details, you know, the cabinets, the plumbing, everything it needed. And we gave him a price, showed it to him, he liked the price, and signed the plans. We signed the plans. That was 1983. 1984, we went to start it, but then we had inflation at 33%, 33.5%. Everything we had quoted him, windows, doors, drywall, cabinets, every piece of material, labor, everything had gone up 33%. And we had contracted, we said we would build it for a certain price, and so we're going to build it for that price, right? And so we went ahead with the price that we had given him, which meant we were going to build it for free, basically. But, you know, your word is your word, and we decided to go ahead with it. The problem was that the man himself was a difficult man to work for. He was very hard to please, very, very difficult. Every person that I hired, he would basically chase them off. And it became a very difficult thing, and I worked for him for 1.5 years. So, you know, after building that house, 1.5 years, not just the loss of money, the stress, there was a lot of stress involved, and my health broke. I mean, I was really a broken man. I wasn't sleeping, I didn't care to eat, I was having a terrible time with my memory. I mean, I was hard to live with. I told my wife, I said, you know, I felt so sorry for her. I said, you know, if you wanted to leave me, I would understand. I mean, I'm suicidal, I can't function, everything was wrong. I was just not working right. I would pray. I mean, I would love to pray. I love to read. I like to have devotions in the morning. I couldn't read. My memory was so bad, I couldn't retain the thought from one paragraph to the next. I literally couldn't read. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I would sit there and I would try and read, and it was just confusion. It was a jumble for me. So, you know, my memory wasn't working right. And I used to pray for my family. I'd pray for my wife. I'd pray for my kids. And did I pray for my wife? I prayed for my wife, and then pray for my kids. And then, did I pray for my wife? And then I prayed for my wife. And then I said, you know, I've got to do something about this. So I sat down with a piece of paper, and I put my wife's name at the top. I put each one of my children down, and every other person that I wanted to pray about, and every item that I was praying for. Put that down on my prayer list, and I'd put my finger on it, and I would go down it, and then I would know I had done it. And I was sitting there one day, and I looked across the room, and I saw my work boots, and I said, you know, I got to get back to work. 1.5 years, we hadn't earned anything, and here I am, I've got to get some work going. And I said to my wife, when we go to town, I'm going to go to the secondhand store and buy a new pair of work boots. We get to town, my wife says, why don't you go to Workwear World? I said to her, well, you know, we can't afford Workwear World boots. Well, she says, why don't you go to Workwear World? And I thought, well, you know what, even as sick as I was, you know, I'd do anything to please her. I wanted to help her, and, you know, I thought, I'll go down just to make her satisfied. So I go to Workwear World, and I go there they are, Kaufman, double leather, triple stitch, you know, and what I would buy, $79.95. We don't have $80, there's no way. I turn to walk out, and I see on the wall a sign that says $9.99. And there it was. In that, right underneath the sign, there's work boots, Kaufman's, double leather, triple stitch. And I turned to the lady, I said, you know, what's going on here? I mean, this can't possibly, you know, you can't sell the same store $80 and $10. You can't have the same boots. And I said, what's wrong? They got no glue, the steel shanks forgotten, you know, built in the wrong factory, what's wrong? She said, nothing. She says, they're $7.5, and we can't find workmen that will buy them. I look down at my feet. I got 2. I got 7.5s right here. I give her $20. She gives me change. I'm walking towards my wife with a smile on my face, and I could see on her face she was like really worried now. I mean, before she could understand. He's depressed, he's ruined, he's wrecked, he can't sleep. Now he's smiling like a nut. You're like, what's now? What happened to you now? Well, you know what happened is I had put on my prayerless work boots. The lady at the store didn't know that. My wife didn't know that. There's only one being in the universe that knew that, and that was God, and he just told me he loved me. You know, I mean, I needed that. I can't tell you how much I needed to know that. We wanted to start a lifestyle center. I mean, that's why I was building the house for this guy. The idea was to earn money. We didn't earn money, but we were willing to start it in our own home. You know, we moved out of our master bedroom into one of the kids' rooms, and we got I put on the prayer request. Guests, we needed to start off with guests. Well, Dr. He in Vancouver sent us a lady. When we started our first lifestyle guests came right at that time. And I needed to have that guest, and I needed to practice what I had been learning for myself, how to recover, how do you recover from this? And so we had our first guest. It wasn't, probably 4 guests later, we had a lady that came, and she spent 3 weeks with us. And during that 3-week time, there was a couple that came to visit. And this couple were cute. They brought their own lunch bucket. They had their food all laid out. And they came to have lunch to visit their friend who'd come from Airdrie. They lived locally here, but they knew her and they wanted to see how she did, see? So they came and they visited her and they went away, and then toward the end of her stay, they came back to check on her to see what had changed, what had improved. And they were so quiet. I mean, he virtually didn't talk. His wife talked some, but very quiet couple. And at the end, he said to me, can I bring my wife for 3 weeks? I said, sure. The guy's name was Bill. And he comes along and spent 3 weeks with us. And I don't think he said 50 words the whole time he was with us in 3 weeks. Very, very. At the end of the 3 weeks, he says, can I help you? And I looked at him, I thought, well, what can you do? We need help. We're trying to build a lifestyle center. We've got a foundation is poured. We've got it framed up, but we're going to need help. He said, well, what do you need? And I said, well, we have a Caterpillar tractor that's been donated, a D6 Cat tractor that's been donated to us, but doesn't work. Oh, he says, I'll go get my brother. He comes back and he's got a set of coveralls on, and his brother's got coveralls on. They got their wrenches and they pull the tracks off this cat and they rip the back end open and they find a shaft inside. And it's just a small shaft, they get it secondhand for $150. They come back, put it back together, put the tracks back on the cat, drive it up the hill, and they push a road. We desperately needed a good road into the new lifestyle center we're building. And he pushes a level. I said, Bill, how did you do that? Oh, he says, I used to run cats in the seismograph lines in Alberta. He said, he said he had 5 D7 cats that he was running doing seismograph lines. Wow, he's a cat driver, that's fabulous. He says, now what do you need? I said, well, we need a set of cabinets. And he goes over and takes his measuring tape and he starts with a piece of paper and he's measuring and he phones me up from Vernon and he says, I need $600. And I turned to my wife and I said, $600? I mean, she looks at me. We started the building with $1,600. I mean, where are we going to get $600? But we needed the cabinets, right? And so she rounded it up. Every cent that we had came out, and we gave him $600. And 2 weeks later, he came with cabinets, uppers, lowers, everything. I mean, it was just immaculate, perfect oak. He bought oak plywood with the $600, and so we had cabinets for the kitchen, stainless steel sink, pulls on all the drawers, arborite on top. He brought us 2 vanities for the 2 bathrooms that we had in the place, plus a vanity and sink and uppers for the laundry room. Oh, okay, Bill. This is quite a guy. I mean, he can drive cat, and he can build cabinets. So then he says, what do you need now? I said, well, we need a shop. And he goes out with his cat, and he's pushing back and forth and back and forth and back. And finally, I go over and I said, Bill, what are you doing? I mean, this is unbelievable. This is like, I want a 2-car garage. He pulls out a tape 100 feet one way, 40 feet the other. And he lays out the building is 40 by 100. I can't believe it. Okay, so how are we gonna frame it? How are we gonna get it? A fellow donated us the blocks, and Bill laid 3,000 blocks himself. I mean, I thought we needed money. I thought, but the Lord showed me He can give you a pair of boots. He can bring you a person, and He can build things with that person's talent and donated material, one thing right after the other. Bill could wire, he could plumb, he could mechanic, he could run a cat. I mean, I don't think there's anything he couldn't do. The Lord sent us the right man. That was the beginning of Silver Hills. We opened the guest house in 1985 right here. So here, God sends us a man. I mean, the man who has the talent. I mean, that's what we needed. And he had all the talents that we needed. At the time, we had plumbed the guest house. We had it all plumbed. We had set up rads all over the house. And we had put, the copper pipe had been hooked up to the rads. But I didn't have my boiler hooked up. And a man came along, actually a couple came along to help us. They came to see what we were doing and to volunteer. And he says, "What do you need next?" I said, "Well, I need my boiler hooked up." And he goes over to a cardboard box and he rips the flap off and he takes a crayon and he starts writing on this flap. And he says, "Go to town and get this." And I says, "What for?" He says, "To hook up your boiler." I says, "Do you know how to hook up a boiler, a wood boiler?" He says, "That's what I do for a living." He says, "Of course I could." So off to town I go. I have to say, the Lord gave me a pair of boots. And He gave me Bill. And He gave me Len, could hook up boilers. And the program was His program. I mean, these are His children. These are the children that He needs, like I was. I was sick. He has children that are sick. They have all kinds. They have heart disease, they have diabetes, they have depression, all kinds of illnesses. I got to tell you about a fellow that came. So here we are. We're walking home. It's October. We're walking up the driveway, and this car pulls up. German people, broken English. "Is this a place to stay?" And I said to Eileen, "Do we have any rooms?" And she says, "Yeah, we have a couple of rooms." And I said, "Do you folks want to stay? You want to stay here?" And they said, "Sure, okay, we'll stay." And so the next morning at breakfast, I'm saying, "How long have you been in Canada?" And they said, 6 weeks. I said, what are you looking for? You want to buy land here? Or what do you, 6 weeks? And Uwe says to me, "We were looking for this place." They actually stayed until they had to fly out of Calgary on Thursday, so they stayed until Wednesday, and we made friends with them and chatted. It was difficult because it was English and German. And I thought, that's it, they're gone, we'll never see them again. Next spring, they phoned, said, "We want to come back to Silver Hills for 3 weeks." So they came. And while we were walking on the nature trail, Uwe says to me, "You know what happened last year?" And I said, "No, I don't really know what happened." He says, "Well, when we flew into Calgary, coming to Canada, we had promised our daughter no more smoking. We were smoking less, but we hadn't quit till we drove in here. And we realized this was a no smoking place, and we knew that we were in the right spot." Well, Uwe and Dorothy came back year after year. They kept coming back. And each time they made a change. And Uwe, as he got closer to retirement, he told me, he says, "When I retire, I'm coming here to work." Now, Uwe phoned me last year. He's in his 80s now. And he said to me, "Phil, Dorothy and I want to come back one more time. We want to come back and say goodbye." So he comes all the way over from Germany. And, you could tell he was starting to show his age, and I got him on the nature trails, got him walking. And you could see him start to, his eyes lighten up, and he started to get feeling better. And he phoned me and he says, "I'm coming back next year." He was saying, "They're not going to say goodbye, I'm going to keep on living." So it's just really good to see Uwe and Dorothy and the improvements they made. So people ask me, what do you teach at Silver Hills? I mean, what's the program? What's the foundation of the program? Well, we call it the 8 natural doctors. We start off with exercise. The foundation of good health is exercise. And so that we have nature trails, we have 90 acres, and we take people out into nature. And we have water. We teach them the eliminary organs and the importance of drinking water. And then we teach them how to deep breathe and how breathing helps them sleep at night. It helps them to relax. And we have a whole, probably 4 classes on nutrition. We start off with the Western diet, then we do protein, we do carbohydrates, we do fats. We do the physiology of digestion. That's one of my favorites. And it's one of their favorites. When they understand how they digest their food, then they look at how they eat their food somewhat differently, and they really appreciate that one. We do sunlight, we do rest, and we do one that we call abstemiousness. And people say, what do you mean? Well, if it's a poison, we try to get them to leave it out of their lifestyle. And we also give them cooking school classes. You know, we teach them how to cook, how to change their cooking, because we're going to teach them to move away from the diet they may be on to a plant-based diet. And the last one, of course, my favorite, because of my work boots, is Trust in Divine Power. And, you know, I mean, the whole program was built on that, but we teach them that. And, you know, it's not, Trust in Divine Power, you know, like, when you say that, people kind of, you know, like, okay, you're going to get religious on me. And I tell them, you know, this is not a religion. This is a relationship. You have a Heavenly Father that loves you, and He wants to give you a pair of work boots. He wants to give you that same experience of having your experience with Him, where you came in need and He supplied that need and showed you that He loves you. We've got the 8 natural doctors, we've got the nature trails, and you know, we decided that we wanted to do it in a way that people would be felt like they were pampered. So we built a spa. We have 5 massage rooms. We do detox wraps. We have 2 infrared saunas. We have a steam room. We have a hot tub. You know, so we pamper them. You know, so not only are they getting instruction and exercise and gourmet meals, but we do it in a spa setting and out in nature. You see, my dad, I think he was right. If we can get people away from the stresses, from the city, from all the things, get them out in nature. You know, he used to always tell me, he said, nature is God's physician. My father came out to visit Silver Hills, and he loved it when he came here. He saw his vision, he saw his dream, you know, because he loved to minister to people. I mean, and he saw this whole project now as ministering to people. You know, I used to always say, you know, the angels long to use our hands and our voices in ministering to others. And when he saw this place, he says, that's exactly what's happening here. The angels love to use our hands and our voices to minister to other people.
In his darkest hours, God provided Phil with a simple pair of work boots to reveal His love for him. And that's what Phil needed to get his health back. His father had taught him so much about health. He had studied health academically for himself. But then, when he had to get his own health back, he began to dig deep and really study it. And what he learned became the foundation of what he teaches at Silver Hills. And it all began with the revelation of God's love through a pair of work boots that gave him the direction that he needed to move a mountain of obstacles.
Like so many others who sincerely dedicated their lives to God's service, Phil Brewer was confronted by obstacles and overwhelmed by trials. Even his prayers seemed hard to speak. Like God's people in the Bible, we often question God. If you're leading me, why do all these problems keep coming at me?
The reality is that it is because God is leading you that these overwhelming difficulties keep coming into your life. The Lord asks this question in the Bible: can I not do with you as the potter does with the clay, says the Lord? Look carefully, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand.
Have you ever watched a potter working with clay? The potter takes the clay and molds it according to his will. He squeezes it and works it. He tears it apart and presses it together. He wets it and then dries it. He lets it lie for a while without touching it. And when it is perfectly pliable, flexible, bendable, able to be molded according to the potter's will, then he continues the work of making it a vessel, a pot, or a container of some kind. He forms it into shape and on the wheel trims and polishes it. He dries it in the sun and bakes it in the oven. Only in this way does it become a vessel fit for use.
This is how God, the master potter, desires to mold and fashion you and me. As the clay is in the hands of the potter, so am I, and so are you to be in God's hands. We are not to try to do the work of the potter. Our part is to yield ourselves to be molded by the master worker.
That's how you become the hands, the feet, and the voice of Jesus and his angels to others. Like Phil and his entire family love to use their hands and their voices to minister to other people, you too can be truly possessed of one purpose, and that purpose is to live to bless others.
Friends, you might have a lot of questions about health, as Phil talked about it, and so we have a free offer that we can send to you right now.
8 Steps to Health is a small window into what Phil calls the 8 natural doctors. Our free offer, 8 Steps to Health, will guide you through 8 simple changes you can make to help you along your own personal journey to live longer and feel better.
We wish to pray for you. If you would like to send us your personal prayer requests, the information for how to contact us is on the screen. Tell us your request, and we will put you on our personal prayer list and pray for you personally.
Before you go, we would like to invite you to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also listen to our podcasts. And if you go to our website, you can see our latest programs.
You too can experience the fullness of life found in the words of Jesus when he said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God."